everybody and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about my 29-gallon planted aquarium, and this is going to be part 3 on my multi-part series of this aquarium. In this video I'm going to be talking all about the plants. I'm going to talk about choosing plants, what plants can I keep, how to plan your plants into your aquascape, and last I'll talk a bit about putting them into your aquarium. Now again, this is part 3. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos, I'd recommend go checking those out. It will provide a lot of context for everything that I talk about in this video. So if you're a little bit confused about what the plan is, I'd go check those videos out because that'll probably clear all that up for you. But let's just jump right into it. Alright, so when it comes to choosing your plants, I have a particular series of events that I follow to help narrow down my selection for choosing plants. When I first got started, there's a lot of plant variety out there. And if I just went to the fish store, if I just went online just to look for plants for my aquarium, it'd be very, very overwhelming. So I like to take a step back and start planning my aquascape and figure out what plants can I keep. Now usually, what I try to do is before I plan the aquascape itself, I like to think about what equipment will I have access to. Now if you haven't bought your equipment yet, then this may or may not apply to you. But personally, I usually have the equipment already to go, or I know what I'm going to end up buying, and I kind of plan that into my budget. So with this particular aquarium, I knew I wasn't going to buy a whole bunch of extra equipment. I wanted to keep that very, very minimal. And for this aquarium, I already had a Finex Planted Plus LED, and this is one of the older models. I don't think they still sell these models, but this will give me kind of medium to high highlight, somewhere in that kind of range. I knew I had ADA aqua soil, so I had a nice nutrient-rich substrate, but I knew I wasn't going to have CO2. I had no plans. I still don't have any plans on adding CO2 to this aquarium. So I knew that when I was designing my aquascape, I needed to take those limitations into consideration. So if I wanted to keep a like dwarf baby tears or a dwarf hairgrass, or if I wanted a thick green carpet, so like kind of this tank, I have this tank has CO2 and it has dwarf hairgrass. So I knew I can grow that plant in this particular aquarium. But with this tank, I knew I wasn't going to do that. And even if I could, so let's say I even had CO2, I still don't think I would have gone with a really complex foreground, due to the simple fact that this aquarium, the 29, is a very narrow tank, and it's also very tall. I have it on a very tall stand, so getting into the bottom to like trim and maintain those plants would have been a bit too high maintenance, and I wasn't about that with this particular aquarium. So you kind of wanted to take that into consideration as well. What's your maintenance routine? What do these plants need? And then once you kind of realize, all right, this is what I have, this is the setup that I have, and this is the conditions that I'm going to have for these plants, you can then pick plants accordingly, or design your aquascape accordingly to reflect what you can grow. It doesn't matter how good your hardscape is. If your plants don't look good and your plants are all dead, dying, and nutrient lacking, your aquascape's not going to look very good. You can be the worst aquascaper in the world, and if you can just grow plants, your aquarium's going to look good. There's something about having a tank full of like beautiful green plants that it just looks good no matter what. Even if it's just jungle thrown in together, you could be blindfolded just putting your plants in your aquarium. If they're growing, it'll look good. So just take that in consideration. Like, you don't have to be an amazing aquascaper to have really good plants. Mostly when it comes to plants is just equipment. What kind of setup do you have? Usually there's not a whole lot of like secrets that allow you to grow certain plants. It's just, do you have these conditions that the plants need to survive? All right, so once you have that into consideration, you know what you can keep. Then I like to think of, okay, what kinds of plants do I want in my aquascape? So maybe I'll think of, okay, in this corner, I want to have stem plants, and maybe in this corner I want to have a sword, and maybe in the foreground, I'll have crypts or something like that. So with this aquarium, that's kind of what I did. I was like, okay, I want to do the drift pile on the kind of left side, and then I want to have sand over here, and then I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I put a big sword in the back. I wanted this big wall of green in the back. Now, if you can order your plants after you've done your hardscape, this step can be a lot easier. If you have a really good plan and vision in your head, you can probably order the plants at the same time you're doing your hardscape. Usually, if you can, just get the plants after your hardscape's done. It just gives you that extra time to just be chill, go slow with your hardscape, make sure you like everything, and then you can kind of figure out how much space you have for plants. So with this tank, I knew I wanted a stem plants in the far left corner. I knew I wanted a sword plant somewhere along the back. I knew I wanted to have like an easy kind of foreground type plant in the front. And so I was able to just narrow down my selection of plants and look for ones that would achieve the look that I wanted. Now when I'm choosing my plants, I like to buy a couple plants that are going to grow really fast, and usually have some plants that are going to grow slower. If I only buy fast-growing plants, there's a good chance I'm going to have to do a ton of work trimming the plants. So as much as I can, I like to reduce that, because otherwise it just, maybe at first you'll be able to keep up with it, but a year down the line, 2 years down the line, it's... If you have the patience for it, great. I don't, so I try to limit myself. So for example, in the far left corner, I have a stem plant that was sold to me as Kabomba. I think that's how you pronounce that. And that plant grows really fast. It's the fastest growing plant I have in this aquarium. And there's lots of other types of plants. You could use Alodia, hornwort. Those are two other really good fast growing plants. And those are going to be really good at competing with algae and pulling nutrients out of the water. The big advantage I hear thrown around all the time is that your planted aquariums, they're so low maintenance, right? But if you have a bunch of slow growing plants, if you have an entire aquarium full of Anubias or Java fern, or even to an extent crypts or swords, those are usually slower growing plants, and you're probably still going to have algae issues. But if you have a few fast growing plants that maybe require a bit more work to maintain, it should help reduce the amount of algae that you're pulling out of your aquarium. And you can plan that into your initial list of plants that you purchase. So having that in mind in the back of your head, think of, okay, I've got some plants that I like. It's like, oh, are these gonna balance out and help create an easy to keep aquascape? So that's something I take into consideration. Usually that's the last thing I think about. Usually I'll look for the plants, see what I can find that I like, and then be like, all right, I need a couple of these that are going to grow faster. So I'll make this stem plant grow. I want to pick out a stem plant that'll grow faster here. That way it kind of makes the whole aquarium a bit easier. Now in the rest of the aquarium, I have a really nice kind of marbled sword plant on the right. I think it was like a gold spot, or so it's something like that. I couldn't remember what the person sold to me as. There wasn't a tag or anything when I got that one. It looks incredible, even with no CO2 and some liquid nutrients that I've been adding. It's got these amazing kind of green and red leaves that just look super cool. And then in the front, I have some narrow leaf chainsword. This is a plant I've had some mixed experiences with in the past, but I wanted to give it a shot. I was able to get a really good deal on a whole bunch of it, so I was like, all right, we'll give this a shot. We'll see how it goes. If I don't like it, I can always switch it out later. That's no problem. Right now, the crypts that are kind of right behind it look really, really good. So if the crypts are going to do this good, if the chainsword doesn't end up working, I'll probably replace it with even more crypts, because they just look really good for whatever reason. Then on the driftwood, I have trident Java fern, and I have some Hygrophila pinnatophyta. Now the Hygrophila pinnatophyta is a bit more of a kind of intermediate or to experienced plant. It's a bit harder to grow than any of the other plants that I have in there. It's kind of like my we'll see how it does plant. Usually when I'm picking out plants, I get a bit carried away. There's a lot of really cool plants out there that are a bit harder to keep. And this is kind of my one where it's like, oh yeah, this plant's really cool. We'll see how it does without CO2. Now in the end, if it doesn't quite work, I have CO2 in here. I have some space. I might throw in a couple stems. So I can move it around a little bit just to justify that purchase. But do keep that in mind. When you're picking out your plants, get some that are going to do fine. But I'd also maybe get one or two that look really cool but may or may not grow with your current conditions. Especially if you're a beginner, make sure you get that one or two fast growing, easy to grow plants just to get that success, just to give you that kind of positive reinforcement. Personally, I really don't mind trimming the plants. I know when I was getting into planted aquariums way back when, that was the one thing that kind of like turned me away, was like the idea of having to trim plants constantly. But I can honestly say, after keeping planted aquariums for as many years as I have, it's one of the most rewarding feelings, just growing these amazing plants and being like, yeah, that's it, I did it. It's a very satisfying feeling. And if you've never kept a planted aquarium before, I would really recommend it. It's just, there's something about it that just can't be replicated anywhere else, or it definitely can't be replicated with fake plants. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you watched all the way to the end, please consider subscribing, like the video. It just helps me know that you guys are watching to the end. That way you don't miss out on my future videos and stuff. You've heard this all before. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.